Welcome everyone. Today we'll have a guide on how to play Genshin Impact without re-rolling. Over here you can see that I have made about 8 points on the things I want to touch on this guide. Firstly, we'll introduce the starter units and highlight what they are and the plans for the starter units. Followed by that, we'll have the understanding what the characters are, each roles of the characters. And after that, I'll introduce some of the foundations of the game, the elemental synergies and resonance with different character parties. Next up, we'll look into the potential for the early game and the mindset for early game when you play Genshin Impact. Then we're going to look at the road progressions. So what happens when you play 1 day? What happens when you play 7 days? What happens when you play 14 days into the game? What are you looking at and what would you expect to progress as a free-to-play player or a pay-to-win player? So we'll look at both. Next up, we'll look at the mid-game and what are the importance of unlocking Constellations, which are the unique endgame features of the game. On the 7th note, we'll look into the theory crafting for the late game and also the potentials to make ourselves stronger. You know, getting 4 and 5 star weapons, getting artifacts, getting new units as we acquire more resources in the game. Lastly, I'll highlight the importance of using potions and food for buffs and the option for co-op. Sometimes you just can't be the boss. Then why don't you get a friend who has been rerolling very hard to make sure he pays off his work by helping others? You know, he worked hard on his 5 stars, he can help us out as well. We start the game with the Traveler. The Traveler is a 5-star legendary unit by stats, and also the Traveler has the ability to change elements. The Traveler starts in the air element, and she can change or he can change into the earth element. After that, we'll be looking to Ember, and we'll be getting Kaeya, we'll be getting Lisa from the main quest. And by doing your first beginner's wish, you'll be getting Noelle, which is a really good support, tank, and also healer. So let's look into Traveler. The Traveler's pretty basic ability is to use the air blade, and ultimate is very good for controlling and also for doing extra damage. Being the air elemental Traveler, you can synergize with a lot of other elements to boost and enhance their powers. So air element is very flexible. The Traveler will be a support and support carry. Basically, the Traveler will be casting her skills off cooldown whenever it's ready. Next up we have Ember. Ember is a Pyro archer, which is one of the first characters you get. Her attitudes are great, I love her dialogue, but the downside is Ember is not a very strong unit in the mid and late game. So the only good thing about Ember to keep on the party is that her special passive, the gliding champion. A lot of characters except the Traveler have a special passive to keep on the team. So some characters cook really well, some characters give you special enhance, other characters reduce stamina. Ember is going to reduce stamina when you're flying, and this is very useful for certain flying quests and also for some of the missions which you have to travel far away. The next character we'll get is Kaeya. Kaeya is one of the basic cryo one-hand swordsman, and he doesn't excel in much of anything. The good thing about Kaeya is he is actually pretty good at cooking the fruity squirrels if you look into the cooking section. And on top of that, when you have Kaeya on the party, when you're running around, you lose 20% less stamina. There is a special thing about Kaeya that most people are not aware of, which I'll show you guys as a small bonus. It's a special feature with Kaeya, which no other character can do. It's his ability to create Ice Bridge. I can be creating Ice Bridge with this Ice ability, and this ability have a 6-second cooldown. The bridge lasts for 10 seconds. So what that means is no water is left unchecked. You can travel anywhere on water without having to swim. You just have to be a little patient. As you can see, I could keep running. My bridge will stay afloat. And by doing this, there are places in the map that requires you to swim a long time and acquire the stamina. You can just make a bridge there. And you know, as long as you keep making the bridge, guys, you can keep going. So this is why Kaeya can still be useful. As we progress in the story, we'll receive Lisa for free as well. Lisa has some very interesting talents. As you craft potions, if she's crafting a potion for you, there's a 20% chance of you getting another potion. And this is very nice when crafting potions for mid game and late game, which we'll touch upon. Lisa is your average mage, and she has nice abilities to attack, and she can make use of the elemental boost from the synergies of artifacts. Lisa really shines when you unlock her Constellation, and the higher you lock, the stronger she becomes. She can be a support character with dealing debuffs and dealing damage over time. She can also be a damage dealer for the whole team. And if we run off characters at the start of the game, we don't get anything great, or if I got a weapon instead of another character, I'll use Lisa as my main carry unit to do damage. Looking at the skill details for Lisa, Her Lightning Touch allows her to attack enemies and perform electro damage, and also the Violet Arc is a spell that she can press and send off a small AoE, and also she can hold on to it. The best thing about this ability is that the press cooldown is only 1 second. After that, the Lightning Rose is a constant damage over time that can be debuffing enemies with electric debuff. What's so good about Lisa is, as we mentioned earlier, as you unlock her Constellation, she becomes stronger with higher levels of damage, with increased defense, and also the chances of shocking nearby enemies as she comes onto the field. But that's going to be much later in the game for us. For the build of Lisa, the website I'm using at the moment, which I'll have the website attached at the description. So there's 2 recommendations for Lisa, and I totally agree with those. The first recommendation is she's going to be a support unit. As a support unit, you should really use a prototype that regens health for the whole party. And on top of that, you can buff the party with attack with the artifact upon getting 4 of those. Because we didn't reroll for a character, we'll be using the free characters, and Lisa is one of the best ones for us for now. So Lisa's rotation will be attack enemies normally, then press her 1 second cooldown skill over here with the Violet Arc, and by pressing Violet Arc every cooldown with 1 second, you can rotate the synergies of this item, which is a solar spell. You do need this item to make it work, but even if you don't get this item, she's still a sizable damage dealer. So having this item is really beneficial because each time you normal attack, you increase your elemental damage, and vice versa, each time you elemental attack, you increase your normal damage, which works perfectly for her. And then you want to get high electric damage as Lisa combines with other elements, such as fire, wind, electric, pyro, hydro, etc. Noni is one of the starter characters for us. You can obtain Noni from the 10 pools from the beginner's wish. And let's go into Noni. She has some very interesting passives. Similar to Lisa, Noni's talent is to enhance the potion making abilities and cooking. For her, it's cooking. So here, when she's cooking a dish that's boosting defense, 12% chance you get a double product, which means you save ingredients as you cook. On top of that, Noni is actually one of the best starter characters for healing and tanking. Going into the details of Noni over here, so her breastplate ability allows us to deal geo damage to enemies. After that, it is scaled according to her defense to absorb geo damage. And also, there is an instance of healing as Noni attacks enemies. At 50% chance as she hits enemies, she'll be healing based on her defense. So she scales very well with defense. On top of that, if you happen to find 1 extra Noni and unlock her first Constellation, she'll be healing with breastplate at 100% at a time. It might not seem much, 100%, and here is 50%, but if she's healing at 100% of the time, it doubles the healing from the effects. So as if she's getting 40% defense healing, if on the first one. That's a great beginner character. Noni is going to scale off on base attack and also defense. She can use a bit of HP, but the higher defense she has, the stronger she becomes. We'll be looking for artifacts that give us percentage defense on the Sept stats and also set stats. We'll also look for artifacts that give us flat defense. The weapons, we can look for any of the weapons 3-star or 4-star that increase base defense first and also base attack. By starting Noni's shield and holding down the attack button, Noni can start spinning and hit multiple enemies as she goes. The higher stamina you have, the longer she spins, and this usually generates a lot of healing. Usually we're looking at about 5 to 10% healing for the entire party, and the higher armor Noni has, the higher the healing is. I will be recommending a starting party for new players, starting with Lisa, the Wind Traveler, Ember, and Noni. This gives us some of the synergies that comes across with Ember's passives. Lisa can be the main damage dealer, or Noni can be the main damage dealer, depending on the best weapons you find for each of those. If I get a 4-star weapon for Lisa, I'll use her. If I don't, I'll try to use Noni with a 3 or 4-star sword, and I'll be upgrading those two to higher level first. The Traveler will be using her and his abilities as they go on to cooldown. Over here we have the updated version of the elemental reactions for GENSHIN IMPACT. What we want to focus is going to be wind, geo, fire, and also electric. The combinations we can combine is going to be the increase of elemental damage by wind onto fire and electric. Followed by that, we can use geo to crystallize onto fire and electric to reduce the associative element damage taken from fire and electric. Lastly, we can use electric to start overload with fire. How would you want to do this is to cast one set of the elemental spells with one character, switch onto the other character that have the cooldown, and cast the next instance of debuff of elemental onto the enemies. Once the enemy has been debuffed twice, this special ability will be triggered. Defensively, we use the barriers with Geo, and this is when we used our support unit with Noni. Offensively, we'll be using our Traveler to debuff enemies with amplified elemental fire and electric damage. And lastly, to maximize our damage with electric with Lisa, we'll be debuffing enemies with fire first with Ember, then coming back with Lisa. Ember is great for this because she can have a little bear to taunt enemies and allows Lisa to keep her distance. On top of that, Ember can use her fire arrows as ultimate, and Lisa can then follow by multiple debuffs. Since we're talking about elemental combinations, we'll also look at the elemental resonance. Now going to party setup, and then followed by the hotkey over here by going to click onto a character, what you'll see is over here there's a bar for elemental resonance. By clicking this, what you see is having two of the same elemental character on the team will give you a lot of synergies. But if you have 4 different elemental characters on the team, you'll acquire 15% resistance to all elements. I wouldn't recommend worry about this too much at the start of the game. As you collect more characters, as we did here, we have more electric characters. This is why I can consider going for high voltage. And going for high voltage means I'll probably be facing a hydro or water boss, and I want to generate more electric particles. And followed by that, I'll probably consider having myself another set of 2 elements. Because I have 2 electric, I might go try for 2 fire if I have them, or if I don't, I can go for 2 geo with Noni and the Traveler. The Traveler can become a geo as well, and this allows us to have 2 of the synergies by combining into the party setup. Now that we have the early game setup ready to go, let's look at the roadmap for what's to come in 1, 7, and 14 days down in time with this game. Right away at the start of the game, we realize how open world it is with this game. You can explore, do side quests, do puzzles, and do missions that's not according to the main quest. As the main quest progresses, you are likely to face some of the leveling blocks, as we call those. So at level 12, 15 to 18, 19 to 20, and 23 to 29, most of the players will experience level blocks. This is when your main quest of the storyline doesn't allow you to progress until you hit a certain level, and this level is considered with your character adventure level. How to bypass this is to loot a lot of chests, fight a lot of puzzles, explore the world, and make sure you have enough adventure level. At the same time, we also have the stamina function within the game. This allows us to do dungeons, allows us to open up rifts of monsters to kill, and gain experience books and also gold. By doing so, you also level up your adventure level. You can also try to level up your adventure level by doing daily quests, commissions, side quests as you talk to different characters. The more you explore in the world, the less likely you'll be stuck on level 12, 15. And later on, although you'll be stuck on level 19, maybe 23, you still have the understanding that everybody else will be stuck. As we go deeper in the game and level the characters beyond level 40, maybe to 60 or even further, we'll be looking at artifacts and constellations for the mid to late game. For the artifacts, it is important that we have a look at the substats of the artifact. Over here, our artifact substats is defense percentage. If you look at other artifacts, you can also have defense, you can have attack percentage. So make sure you double check the stats of the artifact. If you remember earlier, we said Noni can use the defense percentage, while most of the offensive DPS characters can use attack percentage. At the same time, you should also be actively aware of the star level or the grade of the artifact. We'll be mostly using the 4-star and 3-star artifacts, and those should also have the correct substats. If they do not have the correct substats, you can still use level 1, level 2 artifact, and I wouldn't recommend leveling them too much. But if you do, make sure you also use those old artifacts as upgrade materials for the existing artifact. Let's say I have found a 2-star artifact and I upgrade with one of my older artifacts. If this older artifact was leveled up, the transferable experience is 90%. So all the experience I spent on the first artifact will transfer 90% of its current XP to the next artifact. So you don't waste that much, but we also don't want to waste those essential upgrade materials. As we go deeper into the mid-game, beyond level 40, the Constellation will determine if a character is going to do damage for you or just here to cast spells. This is because as you level up the Constellation, your skills become stronger, the damage becomes stronger, and you gain defense and stats boost. And especially at the final stage of the Constellation, you gain a lot of special abilities and talents according to different characters. As you can see on the second party setup, I found 4 other characters which are also 4 stars. As we've acquired those and unlock constellations for different characters, I'll be switching characters onto the main team. If I'm needing a healer, Barbara is definitely a higher choice over Noni, and if I'm needing a debuffer for electric, Vessel is actually easier than Lisa to be controlling and to be debuffing enemies. Razor can now become my damage dealer, and I can use Synchro to combine with the 2 elementals to have 2 elemental synergies with the resonance. You can see we have 2 Hydro characters and 2 electric characters. Now you might say, hey, it sounds great to upgrade with new characters, but I have no idea which one's better and how should I replace each characters. I have found for us a tier list for different characters. This is also an interactive tier list. So if I'm going within the electric units, and this will include the electric units, if I go into the different element of units or different weapon carriers, I can look at different units, which is very nice. The tier list also explains the reason for different characters to be on top. Now, do look at this tier list with a grain of salt. This is by personal preference from the creators of the tier list, and this can adjust with different updates. I do agree with a lot of the characters. For example, Venti is very powerful in almost everything, especially in Dungeons and Abuse, as Venti controls characters very well. At the same time, what we really want to look at is the 4-star characters, which happen to be on the top 3 tier. For example, Fizzle is one. Followed by that, we have XiangLing, which has been nerfed recently, so I wouldn't say XiangLing is tier S on the tier list, she's going down to tier A and tier B. Barbara is a really good healer, and is a justified reason for her to be here. We'll have a quick look at Razor, Barbara, and XiangLing's stats in more detail. As a Hydro and Catalyst user, Barbara is very good in healing and also debuffing enemies with Hydro. So Let the Show Begin is a constant effect which heals us when Barbara normal attacks and also has a continuous healing. The cooldown for this skill is a little long, but you can rotate Barbara whenever this goes on CD. Barbara's ultimate also heals massively on the entire party. The cooldown isn't that long, but the key is getting her the 80 energy that we need. She can usually heal about 50% or even more for the whole party, as Barbara will be building for more HP for all of her gears. Build recommendation on the website is quite straightforward, and I also agree with this, because you want Barbara to be regenerating more HP for the whole party, and you also want to increase her healing effect, and also whenever she casts a spell, there's more healing effect received. So those are the best ones, but if you can't find those, get some of the gear, the initial artifacts with more stats gain of HP, that can also work. XiangLing is a fire polearm user. She is one of the only polearm user at the start of the game upon release. Later we'll get more characters, right now she is the only character. XiangLing is ranked really highly because her global attack used to have 6-second cooldown, and this is the most consistent way to debuff enemies. Now with 12-second cooldown, her tier goes from S tier to A or B tier, so keep that in mind. XiangLing can be built for damage, but ideally building XiangLing for a bit of debuffs and increased elemental damage taken can be even better, because she is more consistent in debuffing enemies with fire, and this can be combined with electric, pyro, and other elements you have on the team. Keep in mind XiangLing is also a free character from the game. This will require us to beat Spiral Abuse challenges at floor level 3, chamber number 5. By completing those time challenges on the floor and the chamber, you can acquire XiangLing for free. For most players, this will be around 7 days, maybe 10 days into the game, so there's no need to rush for her, but once you get her, she's a pretty nice fire unit. Now that we had a look at some of the useful 4 stars that can also be very powerful in the game, I encourage you guys to create your own combination of characters with the weapons you get, and also create your own unique teams depending on the characters you enjoy. This is the most important part, because not only do we want powerful characters and we want a tier list, but those changes over time. What I recommend is finding 1 or 2 characters that you really enjoy to play with and build around that character. For the final part of this video, I strongly encourage everyone to have a look at the possibility of food creation and also potion creation with alchemy. If you don't know what they are, I'll actually make a special guide focused on food and alchemy, and I'll actually explain everything. From here, you can create food normally using different ingredients. Some of the strongest buffs in the game can be found this way. For example, the Adept's Temptation increases our damage by 200 to 300 and critical chance by 8 to 12%. This is a massive buff for the entire party. On top of the normal food we can create in the game, there's also specialty dishes, which has additional stats upon created by a special character. I'll give us a quick example of that. Starting with the most common chicken mushroom skewer, which is a very powerful item, surprisingly enough. because it heals you by a percentage HP, also by flex stats. This is also a very cheap item to make. But if you have Kaeya cooking the mushroom skewer, you have a chance of obtaining a fruity skewer, which increases HP restored by 16% of the maximum HP, which doubles from the previous one, and also increase the HP restored by 1200, which increased by 100. This is the same ingredients, but with a chance of getting more of those values out of it. Similar to food, another powerful aspect of the game will be potion making. Here we can be making defensive potions which increase our resistance to a certain element by 25%. This has changed from 35 to 25%. And similarly, we can increase our damage output by elemental damage by 25%. This has again changed from 35% to 25%. So what makes food and potions so powerful is that in the mid to late game, if you're facing a big challenge or a big world boss and you cannot defeat it, you can try to use some of the buffs that we said earlier and try to combat it that way. Also, there are consumables that increase our stamina or reduce the stamina consumption for an extended period of time. As a small bonus tip for stamina, if you find yourself stuck in water and running out of stamina, you know you'll be drowning very soon. There's two ways you can get out of this situation. First way is actually to start the map actually teleporting to a nearby Shire. You can use this method to avoid a certain death. But what if you want to stay where you are? What you can do is actually open up your bag and consume a stamina item. I have 50 stamina item here. By consuming this, you can see my base stamina will actually go up. It went up from the bottom red to higher stamina. Now I can safely swim back to the shore. This also works while you're gliding in midair. To summarize this video, a lot of the starter units can have some special effects with regarding to parts of the game. Understanding each roles of the character can help you set up a party very nicely in the early to mid game. As we go into deeper stage of the game, be aware of the leveling roadblocks and be actively exploring the world for higher adventure experience. And into the late game, make sure you build your characters around higher star weapon, higher star artifacts, and higher constellation level for the strongest character for damage. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this guide, and let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I'll be making daily guides for Genshin Impact as the game goes live, and after the game goes live, we'll be making more guides and content as we explore the world together. Thank you so much for watching guys, and if you like my videos, make sure you subscribe and click the little bell. Thank you so much for watching everyone, I'll see you guys next time.